Welcome to Co-Opinions. My name is Josh, and today I have Brent with me.
Yeah.
So, we both recently finished playing through the game Death of the Outsider, and I know I was really enthusiastic about the very first game, Dishonored, and Brent has been more or less along for the ride since then.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, why not take this opportunity to do a retrospective of the Dishonored series?
Yep.
But until we start that up, Brent, why don't you tell me what you've been playing recently?
Well, since last time I was touching on Viva Pinata.
Mhm.
Kind of slowed down since I got my Xbox Live back. Touched on multiplayer for Battlefront 2 finally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know we both have the second DLC for Breath of the Wild dropped.
Nice.
So I started up Ballad of the Champions, not done with it yet. And then the Battlefront 2 DLC dropped, and I finally beat that before just today. So
You said that was pretty short, though.
yeah, probably only about a little over an hour.
Got it. So, I myself have been playing Final Fantasy XII HD, which was enjoyable, but I don't know if I'm a lot better at it or what, because I made some significant progress from what I can gather, because I really can't remember how far I am through the game when I do this stuff, so I looked up a guide just to scope about how far I was. Not a spoiler, because I beat the game multiple times. Apparently in about 10 hours, I am maybe about halfway through the game.
Huh.
Now, this game allows you to speed up combat and travel,
Ooh,
so grinding ain't a thing at all.
looking forward to this.
So that ain't bad. But I put that down for a little bit, not because I wasn't enjoying it, because the Breath of the Wild DLC dropped, which was unbelievably disappointing. I'm not going to get into that right now.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it when I briefly talk about it at the beginning when I beat it. So
Yeah, we might have to do a DLC revisited thing. And the Resident Evil 7 Final 2 DLC dropped, which one of them is like an epilogue to the main game that was free, and then there was one with the season pass, which deals with the final member of the crazy hillbilly family and what happens to her. Super curious how that's going to pan out. I beat the free one the other night, and I haven't touched the other one. Both of them are supposed to be real short. I know the free one took me an hour and a half. It was fun. It was a first-person shooter, but it was still fun. And I've been enjoying it. Anyways, on that note, let's get into the Dishonored series.
yay.
Now, this is going to be a goofy way to start it. Brent, when did you first hear of the Dishonored series?
You played it. I think you briefly played the first one in front of me. Yeah, I watched you play a little bit of it, and then you're like, you need to play this, so you bought it for me Black Friday.
Yeah. The first game came out in 2013?
No, 2012.
2012. And it got all these critical reviews. People were super stoked about it. But when they announced it at E3 that year, I had no enthusiasm for it. It looked kind of weird. It was a first-person stealth game. Wasn't sure how I'd enjoy that. It was one of those things where all the parts individually look like they could be good, but it wasn't gelling for me altogether. That Black Friday of the year it came out, so this game had been out for less than 2 months. It was on sale for $20. About once a year, I take a risk on a game that I have no personal, huge interest in, but it's on big sale, and it got good reviews. That year it was Dishonored. An example from a following year, I bought the Wolfenstein: The New Order, because that was on stupid good sale. So I booted this game up, and I was absolutely amazed at the game I found, because this was a game we've talked before about how moral choices can affect gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
This was a game that did not have such simple get up to a point and choose A or B for good or bad. You are introduced in this game as the protector of the Empress, and as you are returning home early, home early, and you happen to witness her assassination by a bunch of mystically empowered assassins.
Yep.
And you get framed for it. And the world building in this game just blew my mind. Like, the story was good. I'm not going to say the story wasn't good, but it was all the little details they wove into the game that really called out to me. So one of the things is the underrunning plot through the whole game is something's wrong with the rats in this world. Dunwall.
Yeah.
Something's very wrong with the rats. And the way they incorporate your quote-unquote moral decision into the overarching game is the more people you kill, the more bodies there are for the rats to eat. And the more bodies there are for the rats to eat, the more rats there are, and the rats carry a plague that make people bleed out their eyes and go crazy.
And they're super vicious.
Oh yeah, in swarms, they will attack viciously.
You could kill them without it counting against your kill count. Yeah.
You could. But you could also use them to attack other people.
Yeah. I remember knocking out a dog once, and this is mean. One of the attack dogs.
Well, those things were barely even dogs.
Yeah, they were like some weird abomination animal. Anyways, I remember throwing it to get rid of a swarm of rats, just to keep them away from me.
And very early in the game, as you go to sleep after you've been imprisoned, after you break out of prison.
Is it after you break out? Yeah,
it is after you, because the first mission you don't have quote-unquote powers.
Yeah, that first mission's a little rough.
That first mission does not give you... It's supposed to be a tutorial for the mechanics of the game, but it's not really, because they don't give you any of your powers. I know what they're trying to do. It's a real bummer, because consistently across the board, I have heard the weakest part of this game is the first level.
The sewer escape?
Yes. I've talked to multiple people. Friend and editor of the show, Mike's like, yeah, I started it, but the first level wasn't very fun. I'm like,
yeah, you really got it. You just got to powerhouse through that.
And then you can come back later and be like, oh, this is how I should have done it. But it's not. Yeah. They kind of throw you in the fire. But this is about the weakest point of the entire game. Because after you escape and you fall asleep, you're visited by a mystical figure called the Outsider. Now, the Outsider ties into the world building that I found absolutely phenomenal about this game, because you don't really know anything about him.
No, he's just a weird demigod
with black eyes who exists in the void, which is a place you are when you sleep sometimes, maybe.
Where you maybe go when you die?
Maybe.
That's never really... We'll get into that, I guess.
We'll get into that. And he says... Yeah, I think you're very interesting, Corvo, main character of the first game. So I'm going to give you my mark. So now you have powers. Ooh. And the first power he gives you is the power to blink, which means you can teleport.
Oh, so useful.
It's so useful, but you have to set it up. The initial version of Blink, I was not a super huge fan of.
I liked it. I didn't know... There were problems with it, but it was one of those, I didn't realize all the problems until they made it better.
Right, and we'll get on to that. But as you progress through the game, there is a main objective in each level. Most of the main objectives in the levels have a violent and a non-violent way you can resolve them.
Yeah, but you usually, for the non-violent way, you have to do some of the side objectives.
Right, the violent way is always more straightforward. Always.
Just assassinate the target.
And usually. Sometimes there's incredibly creative ways to assassinate the target. I know in one you could poison his wine before it got brought out. You could possess people who were going... The plethora of powers you were granted by the Outsider. There was possession, I believe.
In the first one, man, I can't remember.
I don't remember now that I actually
I don't think possession was one in the first one.
Okay.
I think you could control rats at some point.
I can't remember if that... Anyways, getting off the point here. You could freeze time in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
You could definitely possess people in the first one, because there was a trophy for stopping time and then moving somebody in front of their own bullet.
Yeah.
So you could definitely possess people in the first one, or swap places. You could move them. I know you could move them. Anyways, so you usually had to do these side quests. And one of the things about the first game that also enamored me was these side quests are what really helped build up the world. And I found that to be fascinating. So I know one of the levels that I constantly showed people as my sales pitch, if I...
Are you, I don't want to steal thunder, like the witch side quests?
The witch, so go ahead.
The woman who's the witch.
Oh, the old lady.
Where when you go into specific parts of, what town is it in the first one? I go in there several times, and then she leads to a specific, like there's a specific part in one mission where you have to deal with her towards the end.
I remember Dunwall is the name of the island.
Yeah, but you go to so many different cities, and I cannot think of...
Anyways, so Granny Rags is who you're referring to. Granny Rags is a recurring character, and you get inklings through your dealings with her that maybe she has some actual supernatural inclination.
Oh, I thought you were about to say some screws loose, because that one's true too.
That is true, but at first you just think she's crazy.
Yeah.
Because she's just telling you to, like, oh, go get a dead thing, or oh, go get...
She's like the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons.
Right, but as you get to the end of the first mission, you're like, there might be something legit to her being crazy.
Oh, well, I will get to it, because I don't want to... Like, I know what the mission is now. When you have to... It's like the head of the guard or something. She has him.
You're at the very end of the game at this point. We'll get back to that, but there's little things like with the Granny Rags, you come across this game is rife with notes and recordings and all kinds of things that
even at this point I feel like I didn't read everything. I need to go back.
I'm positive you didn't read it just because there's so much.
Yeah,
like it's so hard. And scattered throughout the world, you find fringes of people who are worshiping the outsider, and there's weird tenuous connections to them, like you get bone charms.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, how many times did you go into the void in the first game?
Maybe a handful. It wasn't a lot. Went in.
So one of the things that I want to touch on, the fact that you saw the whales in the void.
You did see and that goes into why the world building really grabbed me.
Because one of the things that powers all the technology in this game is whale oil.
Yeah, this game is definitely steampunk.
Oh yeah, it's horror Victorian steampunk in an alternate world.
Yeah. So there is a booming whale trade. And again, this is not something primarily focused on in the main game. You're just witnessing the fact that whales are hunted a lot. And also something's different about whales in that world they never really touch on in the first game.
Yeah. There's so much complex things, because even on that one, like the mission you went on at the beginning was to deal with the foreign government because they were blockading Dunwall because of the rats.
Right.
We didn't even touch on that. But there's so much outside world.
There's a lot of dense world building in here that just, it's really what is the strength of the series.
Oh, yeah.
And as you progress through the game, you start to see things like, as I mentioned, people worshiping the outsider. That makes you wonder exactly, are these people being reciprocated by the outsider? They're not. That's one thing. Like he hears them, but he never answers. They say at some point that like 5 people in the history of the world have the outsider's mark.
We'll get onto that.
That's way later. And as you keep going through, you find out that all these little back and forth political things are really interesting, because you have to figure out how to slowly dismantle the people who wanted to kill the Empress. You uncover the plot to who was actually pulling the strings.
And then after you deal with it...
There's
a celebration.
There's a celebration.
At least you think there is.
Before we get to that, the way that you can do some of these objectives, the one that I showed everybody was called Lady Boyle's Party, I believe. The reason I showed everybody this was because it's the masquerade party.
Yeah.
You can do that entire mission non-lethally.
Is that the one where you have to kidnap?
You have to kidnap her, but to kidnap her, you have to figure out which one's the right one.
I don't remember how that went down for me. It's been so long.
That's the thing. You could pickpocket people who would have inclinations of who it was. You could sneak around and listen to them talking.
Yeah.
There were so many ways.
I remember almost getting busted by the staff and then like choking everyone in the kitchen.
That was the other thing. If there is another mild weakness, it's they weren't... The first game, did it so directly distinguish between hostile and non-hostile territory? I don't remember. I remember it did later.
It did.
It had to have. It had
all the
to
rest
have.
of them. All the rest of them did.
Mm-hmm. And there were other little in this mission in particular. There's religious zealots in this game, and they are staunchly opposed to the outsider and his horrible influence, even though the outsider does not care.
I feel like that comes in more into a play as the game goes on.
The series or
the series, yeah, not so much in the first one.
It does, but even in the first one, the overseers have music boxes that can interrupt your powers.
That sucked.
It's just so bizarre.
I remember because I've not played the kill route in any of these games. I know you have.
I only heavily played the kill route in the DLC to the first one.
Okay. Yeah, I've only done non-lethal, so having to have a stockpile of trank darts on me at all times to take out every overseer and everyone else.
Mm-hmm. And the overseers in particular have armored masks.
Yeah. And you didn't have we'll get into that more. There wasn't a huge array of weapons or darts in the first one.
Not an enormous amount.
No.
But anyways, after you uncover the plot and, avenge Emily's death. Avenge the Empress's death, Jessamine.
Emily is Jessamine's daughter.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've skipped over. Yeah, the Empress had a daughter. She was taken at the beginning. You had to rescue her at some point. Yeah. Take her to your hideout with all of the people in the government who are trying to help you.
And then once you're celebrating, bringing down the conspiracy, turns out the people who were trying to help you just wanted to set up their own government once this was done.
And they were the ones who paid the assassins.
Yeah.
Which I guess we should get into that because...
Not yet.
I guess we save... Because there is a level in this.
Well, that's what happens next, is once they poison you and tell the guy who's been ferrying you to and from all the missions, dump his body in the river. It's like, I couldn't ethically do that because you're too important to me. Good old Samuel the boatman.
It's Samuel.
R.I.P. boy.
Yeah, he's gone.
But he's like, I couldn't bring myself to do that, so I'm leaving you in the flooded district, which is where all the assassins hang out, the ones that killed the Empress. It's at this point that you cross paths with the guy who killed the Empress. Dodd. Very important name.
Yep.
And one of the things, this goes back to unexpected twists and little details, somehow it didn't occur to me that a guy who seemed to have the powers that I now had would be immune to the powers.
Yeah, that was a...
Yeah, when I tried to freeze time and he's like, so you're here? Like, oh. And knocking him out was something I was very proud of. Very, very
Yeah,
proud.
I think I jumped. Like, I froze time, and just before he gets out, I had to, trank him.
Well, he doesn't freeze in time.
What did I do? He was distracted. Like, he was still working at his table, and I got to him. Oh, I froze time to freeze everyone else, and I teleported immediately behind him and choked him.
Yeah. And here's another, to play to the depth thing. Once you clear him out and figure out how to get out, you can find out that he recorded an audio diary, saying that killing the Empress was the first time he felt bad about what he had done. So here they're developing this guy that you really didn't see a need to develop. But they get even further into this. But before we get to that, we'll get to how this game wraps up.
Yeah.
Depending on how violent you've gone through this game or not, the final level can go one of two ways. There's the high chaos and the low chaos. Brent and I both got low chaos, in which you go to rescue Emily again, this time from the people who supposedly helped you. It's a bright and sunny island. You basically just go through it like a normal mission. And I believe at the end, the guy who had been helping you the whole game with the counter resistance,
the general or something.
Yeah, the admiral, I think.
Yeah.
He has poisoned all his co-conspirators, and he's drunk as a skunk. You just choke him out.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, in the high
I think I screwed that up because I think I used up all my darts getting to the top. And I get to the top and I go to choke him and I accidentally hit the wrong button and I hit him. So then he instantly went on the attack and I'm like, oh.
Nice.
So I had to replay half the level and that pissed me off.
Nice. If you do it in high chaos, it's dark in a lot of ways. It's stormy, rainy, and when Samuel the boatman drops you off, he goes, you're an absolutely terrible person. If you don't kill me, I'm sending up a flare to let everybody know you're here. And he will if you don't. You'll get like 30 feet away and it go and set the whole, And the way that can end is at the end, the Admiral will throw himself off of the top of it with Emily, or Emily will like push him off and she'll be like, I was going to kill him anyways. Like, it's dark. Yeah. I really loved how that game played with the consequences of it wasn't just silly binary choices. You actually had to perform actions that had reasonable outcomes. And those could be felt levels later, like a guy that you brand as an outcast in the 2nd level, you can find in like the 7th level, he's been turned into a homeless...
Yeah, there's a lot of effects it can have on just the world around you. It was really interesting.
It's fascinating.
But the later ones delve into that even more, I think so.
And so getting into the later ones, the DLC for the first game... Two-parter. The Dishonored people asked their fan base, they go, what would you like to see us do for this? And people overwhelmingly say, we want to see more stuff with Dodd. Really? Dodd? Actually, there's a lot there for us to develop. So they did a 2-parter, The Knife of Dunwall and The Brigmore Witches.
Yep.
Now, in the first one, I'm trying to remember, you get kicked out. So in the beginning of this, it shockingly starts with Dodd's flashback to his assassination of the Empress Jessamine, which is very dark because you're killing a beloved icon.
Yeah. Don't you you basically replay that from the opposite?
You don't play. You watch it happen.
Oh yeah, you watch it. Okay.
It's still you're doing it, but it's a dream he's having. That way you don't have control over it. Anyways, Dodd's been having a dream about the name Delilah, and he's trying to find out more about Delilah. And in the process of finding out more about Delilah, it turns out that there is some kind of something's working against Dodd, and he can't really figure it out. It's not till the end of the first DLC that you find out Delilah, during the DLC, you find out Delilah's a witch, and she's coming for you for some reason. What's up?
In scrolling, trying to get to this, reading the people that are actually voice actors in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Granny Greggs is Susan Sarandon.
Actually, Carrie Fisher has a
She voices in both the first and second one the announcer over the speakers.
Uncredited. You get rid of the announcer.
Yeah, the other guy. Apparently, Chloe Grace Moretz was Emily.
Huh.
Yeah.
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
I could see that. Anyways, you find out Delilah is some kind of witch that has designs on Emily for some reason that's never really specified in the first DLC.
I guess they don't say
not in the first one.
Okay, yeah. She's just doing weird magic involving her, and it's drawing you because of the outsider.
Yeah, because it involves the void, and you find out that Delilah has a mark of the outsider. And near the end of this first DLC, you find out that your first lieutenant, Billy Lurk, has basically sold you out and is trying to usurp your position.
Yeah, so then you have to get out of the prison they throw you in with a hole, and there's actually one of the you just said the name of them and suddenly I've
Overseer?
Yeah, there's an overseer in another hole, like screaming or something.
Nice.
When you get out. I remember that part.
And this game still continued the idea of your actions affect what happens, but in this case it doesn't affect the actions of the island so much as basically what Billy does. So if you're more violent in the first mission, at the beginning of the second mission, if you're more violent, you see her stab a guy through the back, but if you don't, she just chokes him out.
Yeah, and at the end of are we to the end of the first one?
At the end of the first one, depending on how violent it is, she'll either show remorse for the fact that she tried to stab you in the back despite how good you've been to her, and you can choose whether or not you execute her, Or if you're high chaos, you have to fight her. And then I'm pretty sure you have to kill her. That sucks.
I mean, we both chose let her go.
Well, the DLC for the first one, I played both ways.
Okay.
High chaos and
low chaos.
Yeah. The DLC for the first Dishonored, I beat forwards, backwards, inside, and out. The second DLC, you actually start confronting Delilah, figuring out what her goal is, and you find out she's trying to actually possess Emily. And for guilty conscious reasons, basically, you figure out how you can save Emily. And I'm jumping an enormous amount of stuff here, but basically what's important here is the introduction of these characters.
Yeah. We going straight to the end of the DLC.
I mean,
here.
we might as well.
So you have to fight her in the void.
You either have to fight her in the void, or she's painting a picture of Emily to possess her.
Yeah, you gotta trap her.
You have to switch places of Emily with a picture of like a tree in the void or something.
Yeah.
And instead of her possessing Emily, she possesses this tree, and she's basically banished to the void. And the idea being here that Dodd, the one who condemned the Empire to suffer because of his execution of the beloved Empress, actually saved the Empire immediately afterwards by keeping this witch from possessing Emily and taking it over.
Yeah. And
no one would ever know. And then, depending on what chaos you beat the game with, it cuts to your confrontation with Corvo. And because in the not low chaos ending, Corvo picks you up and then just throws you on the ground at the very end.
Yeah.
And if you have high chaos, he just stabs you through the heart. It's a good time. Now, this game, you may have noticed we blitzed over this pretty fast. The main reason was because the introduction of the characters Billy, the expansion of Dodd, and Delilah.
Yeah.
Those are the most crucial.
Like I've told everyone, if you're going to play the second game, you need to play both the first and the DLC.
Correct. Because the antagonist in the second one, it jumps forward a dozen
15 years.
Some odd years, and Emily is the new empress, who is generally a divisive. Nobody really thinks she's a good empress because she pretty obviously doesn't want to be the empress. No. She goes out at night, does her parkour thing. At this point, it's acknowledged that Corvo is her father.
Yeah.
It was hinted at strongly to the point where it actually kind of tugged at the heartstrings a bit in the first game when you found Emily's crayon drawings that said, Mommy, me, Daddy. And it was Corvo, very obviously in the daddy spot. Like, I'll protect you, child. Anyways, so Corvo is still acting as the royal protector to Emily, and a unexpected guest shows up, Emily's aunt. Turns out Delilah's back. Delilah the witch from the DLC. Claiming,
she walks in with Jindosh machines and... God, I hate those things.
So we'll explain more about those. But immediately she usurps power. She drains Corvo's Mark of the Outsider. And at that point, you choose who you're going to play as in the game. You can either play as Emily or Corvo. Now, this already was different because if you played as Corvo, you had a very familiar set of powers with which to continue through the game. If you played as Emily, you had a whole new set of powers. Here is immediately where I screwed up. So what happens is Delilah encapsulates the other one in stone. You run away. You run to Karnaca because there's something in Karnaca.
You have to run through the house and you do find something. Something that tells you...
So as you're escaping, you get two things. One, the outsider visits you and offers to give you your powers.
Don't you just escape through... Yeah, that happens. Don't you just escape through like a back door and that's when you lock the one guy?
You can lock one of your naysayers or something inside your escape route.
Yeah. So he's stuck in there.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, the outsider says, all right, I don't normally do this. But Delilah, she's trying to get the Void's power, and she's getting real close to where what I'm all about. I'm not a fan of that. Go to Karnaca and figure out what her deal is. Like, okay, I'll go to Karnaca. And if you are Emily, he offers you a set of powers that are different from Corvo's powers. This is an important distinction because in the DLC, they slightly changed the powers for Dawn. Yeah. For example,
the teleport, you now had the ability to
freeze time
when you went to jump, which was crucial in trying to save yourself.
You couldn't be jumping. When you weren't moving, time froze.
In this one, however, in the second one, you can be like jumping and freeze time.
I don't recall that.
Yeah. It like slows down time.
Okay. And this game, I messed this one up because I tried to play with Emily's power the same way as I tried to play
None
with
of these characters, I would say, play the same.
They don't, which is why I messed up playing Dishonored 2. While it was a very, 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 very strong game, I was trying to use her far reach power as the same as Blink. It wasn't. It had way different utility. I tried to use some of her sneaking power. I never used her shadow crawl power right. Her shadow crawl was an awesome power that I heinously underutilized. It was very interesting. So, anyways, you go to Karnaca, and this is an island. Again, this is where Arcane Studios really shines, because there's a lot of stuff going wrong in Karnaca.
Oh yeah, the whole place is just screwed up.
Right. And you get there by taking a boat from a one-armed, one-eyed lady named
Megan Foster.
Had to be careful. And so she's like, yeah, I used to travel with Sokolov. I don't know where he is.
Sokolov in the first one is a scientist who's working with the people who first tried to have you imprisoned. You kidnapped him.
And then it turned out he was just more of a crazy genius.
Yes.
So he met up with this Megan Foster lady, and he's in Karnaca, she thinks.
So the first mission you have to do in this game is rescue him?
That's not the first mission,
is it? The first or second?
You rescue him in Jindosh's mansion.
Is that where you... Oh, yes. Yeah, it is. So you have to spend time trying to figure out where he is. You rescue some other people, though.
I'm sure you rescue some other people. Anyways, you get to Karnaca, and you start trying to set out and figure out what exactly is the situation. Karnaca is... I can't remember... I think it's like not a subsidy. It's like a kingdom under Dunwall.
A protectorate?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's not. It has its own like government, but it answers to Dunwall.
Correct. And they have their own problems, specifically blood flies. Now, I never felt that blood flies had the same threat as the rat plague.
I mean, I didn't, but I also just hate them because I hate insects.
So with the blood flies, the thing about them was they were very violent in groups, and they created hives in corpses.
Well, they killed a person by injecting them, and then they would dig out, like they buried their larvae into their stomachs or something.
Gross.
Like you would go through entire sectors where the houses were sealed up, a lot like the first one with the rats. And you go into the houses to get stuff, and there are just entire swaths of that place made up of hives that you have to break. And if you break them, you can get...
blood. You get some kind of money.
Molasses. I mean, one of the aspects of this game we overlooked for all of them is the amount of just...
There's so much stuff. Yeah. And this game, this is this whole series. The stuff you collect, you don't have to go and sell it somewhere. They just
give you money.
Yeah,
for it.
They cut the... I thought that was genius.
Was the second one where they introduced the weird black market shops? Yeah, the black market shops to get your supplies and stuff.
So in the second one, they introduced the idea that instead of at the beginning of every mission you could buy items, you had to find the shops.
I feel like there were places in the first one you could get stuff.
There were.
I feel there were stores.
There were stores, but
not the same way that these are set up.
Correct. Because in this one, not only could you buy an assortment of bone charms, traps, bone charms being the power-ups you use, there were also, you could buy consumables.
You could upgrade your weapons. Well, you could do that in the first one, but weapons, speed, pouches, everything else.
Just all kinds of stuff. However, in the second game, you had the ability to rob these places, and...
I didn't do it either.
I robbed almost all of them. I'm glad I messed up one, because this goes back to that whole how this affects how the game goes. It turns out if you rob all of them by the end of the game, this is technically jumping ahead, but it turns out if you rob all of them, word has spread about how easy it is to rob these black markets that when you go into the last one, some hooligans have killed the shopkeeper and robbed the place. So you don't get the last black market because they're dead.
One of the things I like that I want to mention about world building is there are all these books about Dodd, and you get the people have a really weird perception of who Dodd was. Like, there's all these mixed ideas. Well, for a fact, he was upset about killing the princess or the empress, and like the way the book describes it, like his opinion is far different from the way the character is. It's a really interesting perspective about these books that are.
Well, and one thing in the DLC, it never tells you how Dodd got his mark of the outsider. Never mentions it. And this will still come back up, don't worry. Anyways, so as the second game progresses, you find out more and more about Delilah and how exactly she came back, basically. And this is why you have to play the DLC, because there's a lot of stuff relevant to the second game that is in the DLC.
So she is the bastard child of the...
She says she's the bastard child.
She says she's the bastard child of the Emperor, the Empress's father, and that she is the Empress's sister.
Older sister.
And she is pissed because she believes she should have rightfully had it, but because she was not a legitimate child, she was not given it.
But you are never given any consistency as to whether or not that's a thing.
Yeah, it is one of those is she telling the truth or isn't she type things. You don't really know, and no one actually has the answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, don't you do talk to the Empress at some point.
So one thing that's unfortunate is you're given a weird mechanical heart thing.
In the first game.
In the first game, and you get it again in the second game. This is important because in the second game, it is explicitly said this mechanical heart you use to find bone charms and weird things, it is inhabited by your mother's spirit.
Because it's your mother's heart?
Yes, it is the Empress's heart you're carrying around.
One thing I do want to touch on before we get too far ahead into this is the level where you have to pseudo-save the one guy. The traveling back and forth in time.
Okay. So that's about half-ish way through the game, so we won't get there just yet. Why I don't want to get there just yet is because this second game added even more variety that kind of blew my mind, to be frank. Specifically, at one point, you're trying to find all the people who made contact with Delilah in some form. One of those people's name is Jindosh. You find out about Jindosh from Megan Foster because she thinks that Sokolov might be there. Turns out he is.
Jindosh makes these machines, robots and machines, and all these other equipment for Kornaka and other places.
Mm-hmm.
And his house is a cluster of just...
It's a mechanical marvel that's a literal nightmare for somebody trying to invade it. Now, one thing that I thought was fascinating about that level, you could get to the end without him ever knowing you're there.
Yeah, but if you screw up once.
Even once.
Yeah.
So he is very aware of everything going on in his house, but if you are super sneaky, super stealthy, you can get to the very end and he has no idea anybody's there.
It's an interesting thing because you could set off the Jindosh machines and they would chase you down, and you could literally, because the house just transformed and moved, you could literally hit one of the levers running away from them, just let the door slide, and just stand there as they're on the other side and wait for them to leave, or lock them in a room completely because the room is just a false room that everything folds into.
It's very well, like,
yeah.
They use that level as an example of look how many different things you can do.
Yeah. Is that the one where you throw him into the chair?
That's the one where you lobotomize him, basically. That's the non-lethal way of taking care of him. Anyways, what Brent was wanting to refer to was you get to a level where you have to figure out how exactly Delilah was brought back. And to get there, you have to go through this area called the Dust District. The thing that's most important about the Dust District is there is a lock. It is a lock that requires you to input basically 10 panels. You remember this, Brent? You have to put names to pictures. You had to put 5 names to 5 pictures. Do you remember this?
Kinda?
It is an incredibly complex word puzzle. It says, if this lady has this, she never had this.
Oh, yeah. That one was...
It's incredibly complex. Complex to the point where you can just go, if you complete the mission as necessary, you can find out what the answer is. But you can actually logic through this puzzle. And I just thought that was a fascinating idea, that instead of doing an entire level's worth of stealthing, infiltrating, whatever, you could just work through a logic puzzle.
Yeah.
I just thought that was super interesting. Anyways, you get to this level to find out how exactly Delilah came back, but the level you're in is a completely run-down mansion. And you're trying to find a guy in there who can find out why exactly it's so run down. The guy, when you find him, is absolutely gone. He's so crazy. And the outsider goes, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you this item. It lets you go 3 years back in time or something like that. When it's open, you can see 3 years back in time how things looked and how people are traveling. Because they're real light on the idea of time travel here. Like, the past is happening in tandem with the present. Very, very light on time travel. And so you have to keep warping in between the past and present.
Yeah, because some of the rooms you can't get into
in the present.
In the present, the door is locked in the past, so you can get through it because it's broken down in the future.
Mm-hmm. So and sometimes you have to affect a small thing in the past, so in the present, it's different.
And it's an easy way to get around guards. Like, if they see you, you just warp to the future to hide, wait for them to pass, warp back. It was a really fun, interesting mechanic, and I really enjoyed it.
And that was maybe the most unique level out of the whole game, which is saying something, because this game actually had a lot of really good ideas.
And you can use the device to end up trying to save the guy that you're trying to talk to.
Right, you can use the device to try to save the guy you're trying to talk to, and you find near the end, because you're supposed to make contact with him. I didn't realize to save him, you had to keep him from going to this meeting.
And I didn't either until... Something happened. I didn't talk to you, but I looked, or did I ask you? Oh, yeah, I asked you. I'm like, so when are you supposed to knock him out? You were supposed to do when you found him here. Uh-oh.
Yeah, same here. And it's amazing, when you knock him out, the present changes dramatically.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly, after you knock him out, you warp to the future, and there are people. Like, this place isn't run down anymore.
Yeah.
There aren't blood flies everywhere. There aren't holes in the ceiling. No, this place is now full of people again. And neither time period wants to see you in that house. But I also like that there's also renovations in the present now.
Yeah.
So, like, there's one part where the bathroom has been, like, completely expanded and made really nice compared to what it was. And you're like, uh-oh.
Nice.
Like, if you warp in, the wall appears at you where it shouldn't be and all this other stuff. I love that level so much.
But it's at this point you find out that Delilah was basically summoned by these people that you've been trying to get familiar with the whole game. And it's through that you find that the Duke of Karnaca was involved and has some insight as to how you can stop her, basically. So the second to last level is... and also that's when the guy became crazy, was when he saw Delilah come back, so knocking him out keeps him from becoming crazy. Anyways, so you find the Duke, you go to the Duke's palace, which is this enormous palace, and what's novel about that level is you have to figure out which one's real and which one's the body double. Yeah. Because the body double's actually a way nicer guy than the Duke.
And if you talk to the body double, he'll help you.
He will. He'll tell you that it's amazing. There's 3 different ways you can identify which one's the double, because the double smokes, the double's good at painting, and there was something else. And if you talk to the wrong one, be like, I'm looking for the body double, he'll go, excellent, here, let me go get my keys for you or something. He'll go set the alarm off and go, I know who you are. You're not going to stop me. Because I messed it up once.
But yeah, I love that the way it happens is you help the body double helps you. You do something to the real one, and then he convinces the body double convinces the security that he's the body double and he tried to kill him.
Yeah. And with all this information, you go back to Dunwall. You find Dunwall absolutely overrun by witches.
Oh, yeah, the place is just a disaster.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. The overseers have been completely ground down by the witches. You find Delilah trying to remake the world.
I feel like we should reveal one thing because we've passed it. So you find out on the boat that Megan Foster is Billy from...
Yes, from the DLC. And Billy feels really, really bad about helping kill your mom.
Yeah.
So you can choose to kill Billy.
Or let her go.
Right, I let her go.
So she goes off to find Dodd.
Right. And as you go back to Dunwall, you find it in this terrible state of affairs, and you can actually choose to circumvent most of the level by going in the secret exit, and Delilah's completely unaware you're coming because you didn't set off any of the alerts because you went the way nobody knew about except you.
What happened? Like, I know when you go in there, you can find stuff that the guy has written that you left in the room.
Oh, yeah.
But is he still in there? I don't remember.
He's turned into a statue.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So you find Delilah trying to remake reality where she is the empress, the ruler of everything.
Yeah.
And you look up, you find a way that you can change the magic to trap her in the painting.
We also skipped over the fact that you do get a reveal about 2/3 the way through the game about who the outsider is.
So, kinda. You find the...
It goes against what you thought originally.
So I thought the outsider was going to be some ancient whale. You find an area where it's a big, like, sacrifice ritual area.
Yeah, he shows you his past and what he's trying to prevent Delilah from doing.
Yeah, this is where he became the outsider 5,000 years ago. They slit his throat and he became one with the void. Completely not what I was expecting. Yeah. It's like, I don't want anybody else to be the void. You need to stop her.
But we'll touch on that again here in just a minute.
Real soon. Anyways, so you mess up her spell to keep her from painting this painting that would make her rule the world.
Yeah, but then you have to figure out where the real one's at once you're in there.
So that was silly because it turns out she's on top of the portal you come through.
Yeah, I had to ask you that one because I got pissed.
Yep. Anyway, so once you beat her and trap her in the portal, you then free whoever, in this case, Corvo. And this game had a way different approach to how the ending works because your actions affected a place that was not Dunwall. It affected Karnaca. So it really changed the person you were more than the place you were in. So if you were low chaos, you pretty much only had one ending per character. You unfreeze the other person and it's happy good times.
Yeah, but then it goes through all the things you did for Karnaca,
right?
How good of a place it is now.
Correct.
Because the body devil is now a
way better, more agreeable person,
and the people are now not living in shitholes, and it's become a great place to live.
Mm-hmm. But if it's high chaos, you can choose whether or not you unfreeze the other person, and if you choose not to unfreeze them in both cases, you can leave them.
Yeah.
So if you don't unfreeze Corvo as Emily, I think her name becomes Emily the Butcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't unfreeze Emily as Corvo, he becomes Corvo the Black and just tyrannical. So, but that ends basically the story of Corvo or Emily. Now, we got to keep this moving real snappy-like because we don't have a lot of time left.
Which is unfortunate. I wish we could talk about Death of the Outsider. There's a lot to it.
So, just real quick, Dishonored 2 expanded on the first game and the DLC in a tremendous way that I thought it was interesting. They focused more on the characters than the location, even though the location was not.
And Dishonored Death of the Outsider brings an interesting conclusion.
It's an interesting conclusion because you play just straight up as Billy Lurk.
Yep.
They admit that she was Megan Foster in the second game because of time travel shenanigans. You get your arm and eye back because of saving the guy, but the outsider goes, you're not supposed to have those.
Yoink.
And he undoes it and basically retcons your eye and your arm away, but in the process gives you outsider powers without having the mark of the outsider. So you have been looking for Dodd this whole time, and you find him. It's
being held by that gang.
It's still in Karnaca, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's being held by a gang. You go to bust him out, and he says, "We gotta kill the outsider." And this is strange because the outsider never really has an agenda. He just gives people his mark. He's like, "You do your thing."
See, and you said you felt it in the other games, like especially in this one. I felt like there was an opinion. I think I saw it briefly in some texts and writings of people in like the second one. I feel like progressively, depending on where you went to as the games went on, the opinion of what the outsider was, like how evil he was, increased. Like in the first one, I didn't feel like he was anything more than a work of nature.
And they seem to imply more and more that he was an actual, like, driving force behind stuff, but I never felt he had an agenda in any game. In this one, it seemed odd that he seemed to be taking such an active role, because Dodd straight up says, "We have to kill the outsider," and your goal through the game is you hear that there might be a knife that can kill him, and it turns out that that's the knife used to create him.
Yeah. And you're getting it from a gang, a weird void-praising gang.
Yeah, they worship the gang. They worship the void. You find out that since Delilah's gone, witches essentially have no power anymore.
Yeah. One of the interesting... So the first 3 levels are essentially all in Karnaca.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 4th one, you go to...
Go to a mountain.
You go to the observatory. No, you...
Oh, you go to the observatory back
from the second one. Yeah. And then, which there are references, because the person who was at the observatory in the second one is referenced in both mission 3 and 4. If I remember right. Yeah, because she's referenced as the person you try to get something from in 3. Billy makes some comment about, well, I guess she could have helped him if she had known, but you knocked her out. So, because she's the one who went crazy. Because she'd all Jekyll and Hyde herself.
Oh, right. Anyways, what's really fascinating about this game as you progress is that there's no morality at play here. And the things you do in this game don't really affect how it goes, because the implication in the earlier games was, since you had the mark of the outsider, you were kind of directing chaos, so to speak. The more violence you committed, the more chaotic the void became. In this game, you don't have the mark of the outsider. You just have powers of the outsider.
Yeah, like I wasn't a fan of her blink.
I can't. Oh, her switching a bit. I didn't have a problem with that. If I had a problem with anything, it's because this is an obviously truncated game. You don't get any more than those powers.
You're like 5.
3.
Is it only 3?
Only 3.
But you get 2 more later on.
Well, when you beat the game, you get a new game plus, and you can use 3 of the powers from the second game, I think.
Okay.
Maybe the first one. So as you're progressing through, you're getting more backstory about the outsider. Unfortunately, in the process, Dodd passes away, which is an unbelievable bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you find out Dodd passes away from the outsider after you get the knife that would allow you to kill the outsider.
And then you have to listen to the recording from Dodd at the beginning of the 4th mission.
Oh, it's a bummer.
Yeah.
But this game is an unbelievable... That's just how the closure keeps rolling. You find notes talking about how Emily's trying to rebuild Dunwall back up to its glory, how Corvo's assisting, showing that the low chaos ending is the canonical end, which is surprising to nobody. Anyways, one of the other interesting details you go is that this order that had been so strongly anti-outsider was actually the people who originally created the outsider.
Yeah. Some dialogue you can overhear at the end. It's a pretty interesting dialogue.
Is...
Well, the one where they're talking about creating the outsider, or their order created the outsider.
And a discussion Brent and I had frequently was whether or not there was anything before the outsider, or what his deal with the void was.
Yeah.
And in the last mission, the outsider says, "You will find the remnants of what came before me." Pardon? And to progress to the end of this level, you have to touch the eye of the dead god. That's actually what Billy Lurk's crazy cyborg eye is called, by the way. Yeah. So we'll wrap this part up real fast, just because you...
Oh, you can... And the void beast things? Yeah.
Those things suck.
Yeah.
I ended up just running to the end.
Yeah.
Anyways, so when you're able to see the void, how it intersperses with the actual reality, you get to where the outsider is kept, and you're given the only real choice in the game. Correction. Right before that, you find out something, to me, mind-blowing about the mark of the outsider. You find some information from a dude who'd been doing a lot of research about the outsider. You find out there is actually a language that only the dead can read and speak. The fascinating thing about the language is that there's different letters and words. It's sounds. Yeah. It's not even letters. And they're put together in a weird, non-traditional sentence format. So what I'm really trying to get at here is the mark of the outsider is his name.
Yeah.
And something I had mentioned to Brent through the whole game is I'm like, why does he keep mentioning how his name was taken from him? He mentions a lot. He goes, they took everything from me, my identity, my name. And then at the end, he says something about, even if I got my name back. I'm like, Brent, am I going to free him by saying his name? And Brent's like, why do you say that? They were not subtle about it. But I did think it was interesting that there was a lot of complaints. So I'll wrap this up real fast. So you figure out that the mark of the outsider is actually the outsider's name. If somebody speaks his name, then...
One of the last things was when you go to where the outsider is at and there are all the people around him.
Yes, those are all the people he's marked.
So that's more than 5.
Ooh, all right.
There were at least 10 there.
Okay.
So 5 that people knew about, but at least
he's been
10.
around for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
So I did think that was fascinating that the implication there was he kept marking people because he wanted somebody to make him not the outsider anymore. Billy, even comments, she goes, this is the outsider? You're not a monster. You're just a person.
Yeah, and when you get there, you run into the spirit of Dodd also being held near the outsider. And you have to have the argument with him because he still wants you to kill the outsider.
He continues to blame the outsider for all the terrible things. And Billy's like, he didn't make us do any of this, man. He goes, but he knew what would happen. She goes, we could have still not done it. They both make interestingly valid cases, but I still leaned way more on Billy's side.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if they were going to make Billy into the new outsider.
I thought that too.
Because the outsider keeps going, you're a lot like me. I'm not sure I like where this is going, buddy.
I thought she was going to have to take his place or something.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was something. And so you either kill him or you un-outsider him.
But on the point of... Like, the point at the end when there's the final dialogue, she does say the thing about, the void touches everyone.
And that was something, a completely unrelated game. There was something similar to this where there was a person who was basically, I thought, the architect of a nightmare dimension. The void isn't a nightmare dimension, but it's definitely the machine with which the outsider piloted the craziness.
Yeah.
So... in this other game, it was my belief that the person sat on top of their nightmare machine and made it run, but then you kill that person, and it turns out the nightmare machine's running itself and just makes there be a driver. And that's what the void is. Yeah. The void is not some kind of giant, terrible construct that needs a pilot. It is a pilotless construct that pulls somebody in to be the figurehead.
Yeah.
Which I thought was fascinating.
So, like, this may not be the end.
I don't think it's the end.
I know it's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while because they could come back in 5 years and they could essentially make it go into space, technically. It could go anywhere from here.
Yeah.
This is the end of the Outsider saga, basically.
Yeah.
Because the Outsider has been the only consistent force in all of these games.
Yeah, though every main character is connected to the last one in some way, shape, or form.
In some way, shape, or form, but the Outsider is the only one that's been in all of them.
Yeah.
I was incredibly glad that I took a chance on this series.
Yes, I was glad you made me take a chance on this series.
Yeah, I'm glad I bought you the first game and also the DLCs for it.
Well, you got me the definitive edition.
I did. I also got it for Kraus. And yeah, this won't be going up till January, so I can say I'm getting him the second one and the Outsider. So hopefully by the time this goes up, he probably won't have gotten around to it, but he'll have the ability with which to do so. And if you're listening to this, Merry Christmas, buddy. Bam.
Merry Christmas in January or possibly February when you play it.
It's going to be much later. Anyways, I'm glad you took a chance on it. I really hope they come back to it, but I want them to take a big old break.
Yeah.
I liked how it ended. It didn't go out on like a huge bang. It just got a sense of realistic closure that I felt, quote unquote, realistic closure that I felt was a good finishing note for the series.
Yeah.
I can't say much more than that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you played it and enjoyed it.
Yes.
I'm glad I've gotten so many other people to play it and enjoy it. And I really hope, for example, there's a game called Prey I know they put out.
I've been debating it.
I heard it's like the next logical step for Dishonored. So I want to play it, but I don't know I have the time. If you play it, let me know how it is.
Okay.
But anyways, anything else on the Dishonored series?
There's always so much more, but I think we're good for now.
I think this was a good blitz on it. We definitely glossed over stuff.
Yes.
But anyways...
But that means people should play it.
They should play it. And Brent, thank you for coming on.
Of course.
Make sure, if you've played this game, get on there and tell us what your favorite thing you missed. The fact that we glossed over Granny Rags almost entirely. The fact that there's stuff in Dishonored 2 and the DLC that we blew past. No doubt. Let us know what your favorite part is. Is this series entirely overblown? Let us know if you think that too. But until next time, my name is Josh, and this is Co-Opinions.